Daly took extra time this Saturday morning to do some extra cleaning and do his laundry, against Esther's stern warning that he must keep his laundry for her to do. He sat in his beautified parlor, which he preferred referring to as a living room, and enjoyed his favorite series, The Mentalist, as he expected Esther, who had promised to show up later around midday. Knock, knock. Who's there? It's me, Daly. Daly opened the door and opened his arms with a smile playing across his lips. Esther found her way first into the house, then into her man's open arms, resting her head on his chest like she hadn't seen him in years. Daly closed the door as he led Esther to the long couch and shifted off the throw pillows for her to sit down. How are you? Fine, fine, Esther replied as she put her phone on vibration and dumped it in her bag. So you did the laundry I specifically told you not to do, right? She said, unsighting the pocket full of wet clothes. Daly didn't reply. Instead, he just fixed his gaze on his movie, leaving Esther to find her way to the kitchen. She fried some chicken and chips, and after dishing it out on a plate, she came back to join him on the couch, and they both ate while they enjoyed the movie. So, how are you adapting to your new office? Well, I'm adapting really fast, and everyone seems to have one thing for me. I don't quite understand, but it makes me feel more at home than at my previous office. Good. And your relationship with Mr. Kelvin? Getting better and better. All thanks to your dad. Although he doesn't condone favoritism, he sets some much needed high standards and I love it. Alright, so when are you? Before Esther could finish her question, Dele hugged her and made some inaudible mumblings in her ear. While she was still giggling, he kissed her on the neck, then her shoulder and ear. Stop, Esther whispered, like she suddenly lost one third of the volume in her voice. Or what? Dele replied, rolling her on her back, or you'll report me. Yes, Dilly, I'll report you. And if you. A kiss choked back the statement in Esther's mouth. Babe, I love you, Esther managed to whisper under her breath. I love you too. Can we go? Dilly's phone rang, piercing the quietness of the whole space. Dilly jerked up and fondled his pocket for 5 seconds before finally pulling out his phone. It's Mom, Dilly said, looking at Esther with fear on his face as he hid the green part of his home screen. Hello, Ma. The lighting in Mr. Jones's magnificent bedroom seemed measured, a colorful room, boasting measurably of the color pink, Evelyn's best color just after getting inside, and the gigantic king-size bed about 10 feet off the backing chair made the room pass for a standard super modern bedroom. Hello, Ma, a shrill voice said from the other end of the phone that Evelyn had to her ears. Chi, baby, how are you there? I'm fine, Ma. Thanks for the other day. You said I should call you as soon as I'm closed for the day. Yes, Jama. I have a little favor to ask of you. It's a bit difficult though, so I'll understand if you can't do it. Whatever it is, just mention, Ma. I'll do it. Alright, it has to do with the annual general meeting files you sent to me the other day. I've finished with the alterations. I've sent it back to your mail. I'll need you to print them and replace them with the original file you're to print for daily. Is that possible? Yes, ma'am. I'll go right back into the office and get it done now. Thanks, my daughter. I really appreciate it, and this time I'll double the tip. Thanks, ma. Gemma made her way back into the company premises and restarted her computer. I'll make sure I teach that boy that nobody messes with me or my family, ever, Evelyn said, downing a quarter glass of champagne and stretching the curtain remote to half close it, when suddenly she heard footsteps moving away from the door. Who's there? She exclaimed, dashing to the door. James? James? No response. James was passing by the corridor when he stumbled on his mother's conversation with Chema and knew Dele was in deep trouble. He had always wondered why his mom was so against Dele. James locked his room door, made his way into his bathroom as he dialed Esther's number on his phone. He explained to Esther what he had just heard and told her to warn Dele. Esther burst into tears because she could not understand why her mother hated Dele so. JJ, formerly known as James Johnson, is the fourth child and second son in the Johnson family. Only he and Esther sort of saw eye to eye on matters. Esther promised that she was going to reach out to Dele, but it was probably too late, and they would just pray that Dele is able to find his way out of this mess. All the board members were present at the annual general meeting of Stratnum Global Construction, with the chairman, Mr. Kevin Osagi, gracefully perched at the far end of the long table. Pleasantries were exchanged as all the big men and women holding the forte of the company and making sure it was a major player in the African construction and development scene made their way to their respective seats. Mr. Kevin welcomed everybody to the meeting and instructed Dele to pass the files for the meeting to every attendee. Dele was nervous at first, which Mr. Kevin noticed and asked him what the matter was. He explained that he was a bit ill and that it was fine. The annual general meeting went on from there. Dele opened the passenger seat of his ash-colored Lexus GX350 and threw in a brown envelope. Then almost immediately opened the back seat and threw his jacket and tie, which he had removed during the meeting, inside and rounded the car for the driver's seat. He made a reverse out of the parking lot and zoomed off his home in Ojuelegba. He had both hands on the wheel, didn't turn on any sound in the car, and didn't have his seatbelt buckled, something not very common with him on a normal day. Well, this day has had its abnormal qualities and can't in any way be classified as a normal day. After the whole drama at the office, the stress and the nervousness, the unexpected turn of events, and the unexplained actions and reactions, Daly was lost in thought, and a thousand thoughts flew randomly in and out of his mind. 10 minutes into the driving and thinking, he couldn't control his emotions anymore. Daly shook his head and burst into tears as he stepped on the brakes to obey the traffic lights. He cried like he had not done in a long while, and he took a quick glance at the brown envelope sitting on the passenger seat. He picked up his phone from the middle dock between the seats, pressed some numbers, and put the phone to his ears. But he saw a traffic official, and he dropped the phone and sped off. Hello, JJ. Were you able to send the mail? Yes, Esther, but I think it's too late. I think mom finally got what she wanted because the meeting is definitely over, and I heard mom speaking with that Choma girl over the phone, and Dele's number has not been going through. I'm trying it on my other phone now. I'll never forget mom for this. I will not, Esther said. Just then, Mrs. Johnson passed John Mrs. Johnson passed JJ on the hallway, and JJ saw that he wasn't smiling. Esther, maybe mom's plan did not work because she doesn't look excited. She looks rather sad for someone who plotted something so evil. Phew, Esther said. I just hope so. If only I could get a hold of Dele so that I know what exactly is going on. Just then, a call came into JJ's phone. Hi, Esther. I think JJ is calling. I'm going to add him to the call so that we will know what's up. Hey, JJ. How are you doing? Hi, Dele. Esther is on this call also. We've been trying to reach you since. Oh, well. I have great news, guys. You guys will not believe it because I'm trying to wrap my brain around it myself. During the meeting today, I received my letter of promotion. I'm now the Lagos branch manager of Stratnum Global Constructions. JJ and Esther screamed and asked Dele how it happened. Dele rolled from one side of his new king-size bed to the other. He was just getting used to his new environment in one of the highbrow sides of Osborne Foreshore Estate. His father-in-law-to-be had insisted that he left the mainland. He sent for Dele in his office and handed him a key and an estate access card. Not one penny dropped, and a house was waiting. Who was he to refuse? No matter how attached he was to his Ojuelegba mansion, this was first elevation. Dele sat up in his now new home as he contemplated the events of the past 4 weeks. So Mrs. Johnson tried to frame him up. It was only by God's grace he did a last minute check on his own part of the bulletin and saw totally different and escalated figures that sure would have landed him in jail on the day his promotion letter was waiting. Mrs. Ajayi's fervent prayers have really not been in vain. He hurriedly printed the right things and reinserted them into the files before the meeting started. After the meeting, he asked Choma what happened, and she so easily confessed that it was Mrs. Johnson that put her up to it. It would forever remain a secret between him, S, and JJ. Probably, Mrs. Johnson understood that Dele had an idea of what she wanted to do, and hence the reason she quickly accepted that he could come and do the introductions. Although she didn't smile, neither did Desmond, but they didn't give any rubbish attitude or let out any negative energy the day when they came to do their introductions. That was enough for him. Wedding plans are already being made, and there was a mixture of feelings for both Dele and Esther. Let me even call S to know how the preparations are going at her end, Dele said, picking himself from the bed that seems to now have some sort of magnetic powers. He grabbed his phone, and just as he was about dialing his woman's number, a call came in. Hello, he said, just as the phone was against his left ear. Hi, Dele. How are you? I'm okay, Dele replied as his heart skipped a beat. Who is this, please? I know you can recognize my voice. Anyways, this is Mrs. Johnson. I still can't believe it, Esther said, smiling and shaking her cup of smoothie. I didn't believe it myself, Dele replied with a mouthful of fish pie. She said she was sorry for the way she treated me, the disgusting eye she looked at me with, the way she tried to break us apart, and the way she thought I was not good enough for you. That she didn't know she was in too deep until she analyzed her actions and realized she had taken things too far. Esther just sat looking at Dele with a lovely smile playing across her face. They both discussed Mr. Johnson's call with Dele the previous day and agreed that Mrs. Johnson had finally come to her senses and was ready to apologize and let things be. Mrs. Johnson paced back and forth on the balcony of the Johnsons' mansion. Her phone was tightly gripped in her left hand and a cup of red wine was in her right. She looked like she was having a lot of trouble in her mind. She let out a short, scornful laugh and gulped down the contents of her cup. Setting the cup down, she tapped some numbers on her phone and put it to her ears. I don't lose, and I'm not about to start now, she said, while waiting for the line to go active. That thing thinks I've played the last of my cards. Funny boy, I am coming at you where you least expect it, boy. Hello, a female voice spoke from the other end of the line. Hello, Linda, how are you? I'm going to need a favor from you, but it's important we see face to face to discuss things in detail. This particular Saturday seemed like the brightest day of the year. The wedding morning seemed like the sun shined brighter and the birds sang louder. Esther had been relieved of all preparations and allowed to sleep till she was done sleeping. 7:23 a.m. Esther woke up and said a quick prayer. Then there was a knock on the door. Come in, please. Four makeup artists strolled into the room as they told Miss Esther that they were ready to start getting her ready for her wedding. The wedding was to take place at St. Peter's and no one was allowed to be late. It's 11:15 a.m. and the church was packed as expected and the service was already halfway. In fact, the sermon was going on and everybody was quietly listening. Suddenly, the pastor paused for a moment with his gaze fixed to the door. But what made everyone look back was the fact that it was in the middle of a sentence. There was a lady at the door wearing a black dress and black hat with dark shades. She stood at the door for a brief moment and then made her way to a seat close to the entrance. The pastor apologized for the distraction and continued his sermon. Then he beckoned on the couple who came to stand in front of the altar where vows were exchanged. Is there anyone here who has one or more reasons why Mr. Dele and Miss Esther should not be joined together in holy matrimony? Let them speak now or forever remain silent. The quietness in the church was now on another level, that if anyone were to drop a pin, the sound would be deafening. The pastor asked the same question for 3 times, as is the ritual. And just as he finished the third question, the latecomer stood up. As some people gasped, she hesitated for a second, turned, and made her way out through the door again. Dele sat with his friends in the bar as he narrated what had just happened during his wedding. How he didn't see it coming. He knew that distraction at the wedding was his mother-in-law and brother-in-law's plan to disrupt their wedding. It was almost too late before I realized that my mother-in-law was baiting me, Dilly said. She had someone come play some panic strategy stunt on my wedding day. Imagine, bro, my wedding day. What do I do for this woman to accept me fully? Just as they were having their discussion, Dilly's phone rang. He grabbed the phone from the table. Hello? Yes, this is Mr. Dele Ajayi. Yes, I know Midas Hands Hospital. Sorry? Excuse me? What's going on? You said? What the heck? How come? Is she okay? Okay. Please give me 15 minutes. I'm on my way. Dele already jumped up from the chair. He hung up as he answered the questions his friends were throwing at him. I don't know. Esther has just been mugged and has been admitted in Midas Hands Hospital. I have to get there now. He jumped into his Lexus, ignited the engine, and screeched out of the Blue Hubs parking lot, pumping the gas and ready to get to Midas Hands Hospital in no time at all. One glance at the rear view mirror, and Dre's car was right behind his, double trafficator on and going at the same speed. This is how far hatred and bitterness has brought me. Jesus, I wouldn't just let people rest and go on with their lives. Help me, God. I will change. I promise I have changed. I have changed, Father God. Mrs. Johnson wailed bitterly, untying and retying her wrapper like it was sort of some instruction. Esther lay on the bed, unresponsive. Her close friend Olamide sat beside her bed, sniffing quietly on her handkerchief. The doctor had reassured him that Esther should be awake any moment from midnight and that no facial bone was fractured, just cuts and bruises which would heal totally in about 2 to 3 months. Rather than cry, he had better be grateful that his mother-in-law didn't make him one of the quickest widowers. Olamide had given them the first-hand lowdown of the story, and in truth, Mrs. Johnson deserved to be beaten by everyone present. She was the one who sent Linda after Dilly. Linda was the distractor at the wedding. This same Linda had relentlessly made advances towards Dilly and had escalated things to the level of stalking, which would make one wonder how much she was paid if she got the job done. Esther had told Olamide that her husband had talked about someone stalking him in one of their regular random gists, and although she didn't show it, she took it up and began stalking the stalker. One way or the other, she got every information that was to be gotten about her, but probably except the very vital piece of information that she was a street fighter and a boxing school dropout. The straw that broke the camel's back for Esther was when Linda sent nude pictures to Dele's WhatsApp, while Esther was using the phone, and after deleting them without Dele's knowledge, she set out to put the bitch in her place, in Esther's words. Olamide strongly advised her against it, but she was determined. She found her way to Linda's house, and just as Linda was stepping out of her gate, Esther met her with two heavy resounding slaps. Amidst the shouting and arguing, a fight broke out, and the slaps only brought out the beast in the lady as she beat Esther to stupor. Dele? Esther called out with a very feeble voice. Everyone paused for a moment. I'm here, baby. Dele leaned over his wife and locked her hand in his, stroking it gently with his thumb. I love you. I love you so much, babe. I love you too, Dele replied, finally letting the tears roll out as she couldn't hold back anymore. Mrs. Johnson, who had been crying on hearing her daughter's voice, burst out into a fresh round of tears and began weeping profusely. I'm sorry, my baby. I'm sorry. I've learnt my lessons. Would you please forgive me? I allowed hatred and bitterness consume me. Forgive me, Dele. I'm sorry. All of them burst into tears as they locked themselves in a sobbing embrace. Please excuse me, it's time for you guys to go. You've overstayed the 4 hours visiting time. The young doctor in white overall came in and made sure everyone left the room, albeit after goodbyes were said and Esther's improvement graph was checked. She will be discharged by noon tomorrow, but you guys can go home now. Only Mr. Ajayi is permitted to stay back if he wants, but I assure you, she's in good hands. Dele gave everyone a hug, whispering thank you to each person. Goodbyes were said again as he made his way back into the ward and every other person departed.